both for our country and for the losses that our families have taken during this current epidemic. We ask that you help us solve this problem, and thank you for helping us find the vaccines and the efforts that went into that to help our people and help people all over the world. We thank you for the knowledge that you gave us and the assistance that you gave us to do that. We ask you now, humbly, to accept those people that have lost their lives and have come to you in all its glory. I ask you on a personal note to accept the folks that have lost lives in my family and ask that you take them and wrap your arms around them and hold them close to you, because our families are so important to us. Help us understand this as we go through the peril of saving our country, both medically and literally, as we fight to preserve the freedoms in this country. Help us do this. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, I'd like to recognize some elected officials that we have here in the audience. We have school board members Laura Hughes and Vicki Manning. We have our city treasurer, Lee Henderson.
Boo!
We love Lee. We also have city committee GOP chair, Bill Curtis, who is busy folding the flag. And I'd like to introduce our first speaker, our city councilman extraordinaire, John Moss. Woo!
My wife might beg to differ. She's home grading papers, but she would have joined us this evening. Is that probably, I'll talk loud, but probably not. I was asked to comment on the city's legislative package with the General Assembly. And there were a lot of bills that were introduced into the House and Senate. On the 31st of January, a total of 1,254 bills have been introduced. So that's quite a few. I'm going to not touch on every bill that we had up there, but I'm going to touch on the big ones. All the ones that dealt with money, like the energy issue and leasing, those things, all those are referred back to finance, and they're dealt as part of the budget reconciliation process that they have, and that's where they're adjudicated as part of the budget and not as individual bills. The bill many of you know about was the bill for the Tourism Development Authority. Like that microphone, it fell flat.
Wow. Good one. Good one.
But I want to thank all of you. First of all, I should say thank you. I really do enjoy serving the citizens of Virginia Beach, and for those watching as well. But that was just there are bad bills, there are very bad bills, and then there's bills that never see light of day, and it fell in that latter category. But thanks to a lot of good work and calls and things from yourself, a lot of hard work, that bill was withdrawn and tabled, and so we won't be having a development authority that in reality was a redevelopment authority when you got down to it. Very little had to do with advertising, a lot of it had to do with redevelopment. But we'll have to see how that progresses, and hopefully we won't see that be revisited. There's three bills which we didn't have anything to sponsor about, which you probably heard about. All the bills dealing with elections. There was initially the bill 2043. That was the initial bill by Delegate Fowler that would have converted our resident districts into voting districts. That was one bill. And though it didn't say Virginia Beach specifically, when you looked at it, that was really its application. Well, then there was a larger bill that was passed. It's more like doing away with basically at-large elections in general across the Commonwealth. That has passed on a partisan vote out of the General Assembly. It's going to go to the Senate. All the indications I have that is going to pass. I don't know what kind of ward elections we are going to have in November of 2022, but it is all but certain that we are going to have single-member districts in November of 2022, and that will be a structural change.
And no at large?
Well, that's the question unknown. That gets you to the other House bill that dealt with our own Voting Rights Act for the state of the Commonwealth, separate from the federal Voting Rights Act, which has requirements if you can create influence districts, which is different. The Voting Rights Act at the federal level says if you can create a majority-minority district, this is how we got the redistricting for congressional districts in Virginia, then you have to do that.
If you can, you must.
Yes, correct. Or you get sued. It's called the Jingles test in federal Voting Rights Act case. But anyway, we never were able to, no one was able to show they could meet that. And I'll talk about litigation in a moment, but that's separate from the bills. This bill sets a different threshold, a lower threshold for challenging, and it inherently isn't bad, because often these thresholds are set to keep the status quo in power. Generally not because they're trying to protect you as the sovereign people. They're generally trying to make sure you can't change the system. The city council had an opportunity last August to vote and give you a chance to vote last November in a referendum if you wanted at-large voting that we have, or if you wanted to change to district voting. But they said no. So tactical victory, just like Napoleon, strategic defeat, victory, loss at Waterloo. Well, that's what happened. We didn't have any moral high ground for our people to, because the council denied us the chance to think the General Assembly is answering for us, in effect. So those two bills are, I can't imagine they're not passing the Senate. I can't imagine why they aren't going to be signed by the governor. Now, what we don't know on those two bills, as they play themselves out, how will the federal judge, because our trial's over, will he call that case moot because he's going to say the General Assembly has given the plaintiffs their answer because there's nothing left to adjudicate? So that's an unknown. But what's not an unknown is we're going to have some number of districts, 7 or 10, but it's going to be it's going to be different than today, and like everything else.
Time to retire Dottie.
When you have those kind of structural changes, no one really knows how they're going to turn out. When we went to direct elections of U.S. senators, states lost their advocacy in the Congress, and lots of things have changed as a consequence. But, life is about change, and we lost our opportunity to influence that. Now, there was also things about allowing us to have more time to execute the dome agreement, the dome site development, and extend the time that debt could be issued because it was constrained and limited on time. So they got additional time in a bill that Barry Knight sponsored. Some things, if you're a firefighter or something like that, EMS, there's a increased presumption of certain diseases that you get, assuming that it was done in the line of duty, which would qualify you for workman's compensation and those relief under those bills. Releasing balloons, okay, that's high priority, but we're dealing with that. So the bill on that we supported. Trying to get a better definition of what a small business is. We'll have to see how that turns out, because we thought the threshold was $250 million was still a small business. So we're trying to get a better definition from the state, so we really are truly targeting people that are the small businesses. So that's something we have going on. Even though, and I didn't vote for this because I didn't think that, even though we don't have diversity in our own boards and commissions on city council, we asked that they have better diversity in judicial appointments. I think that's a good idea, but I think it's a good idea for us. So hopefully we'll take that up. We've always asked for restoring the educational cuts that were made to restore full because we have to make those things up when they don't come, so it's a tax on you. So, but in the end, I realize state money still comes from us, so there is no free money. And a good bill that was sponsored by Bill DeSteph was to give an additional grant to help Hampton continue to expand their cancer treatment capabilities. That's research and development that takes place there. That benefits people across the Commonwealth, particularly Hampton Roads. And with our aging population, we can always use better issues with cancer. We had a very small packet this year, and we have been trying to shrink it down because you can ask for lots of stuff, but if everything's a priority, nothing is. So we narrowed down our list, and so pretty much with the exception of the Tourist Development Authority, most of the things that we have asked for have been approved. I mean, they're moving along to be approved because they were technical corrections, I'll call them innocuous types of amendments. Obviously, those of you who watched council last Tuesday know we had quite a robust debate about the mayor and vice mayor's letter in opposition to the bill to go to the ward system and also the electoral reform to have our own voting rights act. I won't speak for either the mayor or the vice mayor. They do that. I've always learned, and I used to do this to Mayor Sessoms often, that when you sign a letter as the mayor, but you're really signing it as the council member who happens to be mayor, it's always wise to say so. And that's always what I do. I don't think people were malicious about it, but I do think people read that and think it's larger than what it was. So, but I think we'll work through all that in the long run because it isn't going to change the fact that the bills are going to pass. One bill which I wasn't able to get sponsored this year, which I'm going to try again, I think in part because all the legislators were limited on how many bills they could put in, and obviously they have their own advocacy issues, was one to improve our ability to finance a bond referendum if it passes. Currently, we have a lot of people, a lot of property, Centera, you name it, that are fairly not successful but nonprofit, and they don't pay property taxes. But certainly they're very financially robust organizations, and they will benefit from flood mitigation projects. So my bill was proposing, not for all, but for a universe of nonprofits that, since they don't pay property taxes, we could assess what would be the equivalent property tax they would have paid, and then their stormwater management fee would be increased to reflect that, so that everyone who can pay is paying their share of flood mitigation, their property is being protected too. I think it was probably too big a thought process to be absorbed in a short session, but I'm gonna go out there and work on that with the members so we can maybe get that passed the next go-round. We need to distribute that cost as much as possible. I'm not talking about churches, I'm not talking about rescue squads, but there's a lot of other non-profit but very successful business cash flow things that could afford to contribute and pass that cost on in the marketplace, and they should be paying a share of that cost. So that's kind of where we were. We didn't have a super ambitious agenda with the General Assembly this year. But what we did ask for, short of the Development Authority, actually is kind of moving along smartly. Also, we got some things about planting trees, got some things in about tree things. We're supporting, the carbon bank, trying to make that a little bit more successful. I do think that makes sense. I know there's some people in this room that don't support that concept. But I do think cap and trade, kind of like for carbon, does make sense if you can do it right. Use the market to achieve success. Regulation doesn't generally work as well, it costs more. But I'm happy to answer any questions on anything that's before the city where I'm here. I'll do the best I can to give you a candid answer.
Jimmy?
On that issue with Centera, now they're essentially a monopoly in the city for healthcare. Okay? I mean, there's nobody else. You go to the hospital, you go to Centera. And if you want to see something interesting, go to the Virginia Court's website and look up Centera. There is no other corporation in our area that sues more people than Centera.
Well, I'm not going to answer and make any
What I'm
characterizations of
saying
business.
is that, I mean, I understand it's all within the law and everything, but when they claim they're a nonprofit, they're using unfair advantages to push these small doctors and clinics out of business.
Well, I'm not an advocate of certificate of need, so if anyone wants to know, I'm in favor of competition. And many people may know that the Maryview, I think it is a subordinate partner, financial partner in the Princess Anne's complex. That was all part of that negotiation up in Richmond to get the certificate of need. But I'm not a healthcare industry analyst, but I will answer any city council question.
Councilman Moss, we all remember Gomer Powell use of the word surprise, surprise, surprise. That's what I think hit a lot of Virginia Beach taxpayers this morning. We opened up the paper and saw that the superintendent wants to give the teachers a 5% increase in salary. 5%? Well, people are lucky they even have jobs today. Could you please address that $28 million he's talking about?
Where there's no doubt that teachers deserve a 5% raise more than he deserved the $26,000 bonus and his compensation he now receives. So that's true. But I can't control what a majority of the school board does with the assets and the money that they get. And I don't know if and when the gross assets that they have will enable them to do that. All I can assure you is I'm not raising taxes to enable that. And if they are able to do that, they may find out that their ending fund balance that may not come back to them like it usually does, because we have a lot of needs in the community. This isn't, I've answered this question on Facebook, and people have seen I have certainly gendered up sticking my fingers in a hornet's nest, but that's okay, that's my job. Is you have to remember where all the money comes from. Well, in fact, in Virginia Beach, it's mostly residential property. Residents provide most of all the income. And you'll see that, it's but my point is, it's people working. And everyone can understand the concept of shared sacrifice. I think every family would love their teacher to make more money. Let's just be honest. But how many people that weren't working for the government lost wages, lost a job, got laid off, didn't get a $2,000 bonus? So people, you're asking people who have suffered the most to now pay taxes for raises. It's not that raises are bad. It's just this isn't the time to give a drowning man a glass of water. And no, that's what you're giving him. You're giving him a bill. And if we have that much money on the table, we should be looking at tax relief.
Yeah, Lee.
She'll be happy to reduce the bill if we reduce the rate. So that's not Lee's job. But my point being this is looking like teachers aren't appreciated. I know what the hours my wife is spending, 12 to 13 hours a day and weekends to do all the admin overhead to make sure that, so some kid who fails, you have 300 pages of documentation that everybody had a chance for in the past and it's their fault. And if you had to pay teachers by the hour, we wouldn't have some of those policies because you couldn't afford it. But nonetheless, bless their heart. But this isn't about compensation. This is about the ability of the economy to generate the income against all the needs. And is that where we're at today? And I think the answer for what I know now, that answer is no. But I don't know what the answer will be on May 5th when we're voting. But if you're asking me today, I think it's a tone-deaf proposal. But nonetheless, what it does do, in my opinion, is it's now got the community agitated. So here we are trying to form some kind of fiscal strategy we can get some unity behind, because I'm trying to get a bond referendum passed in November, and this is not helping. And then this creates division, because now people are saying, my gosh, these people got bonuses, and now you're asking me to, and I can't even keep my business open. 20% of our businesses are failing, not going to reopen. So these are, I just think it's not that they don't deserve it, it's just not the right answer for the current fiscal environment that we are in. And we got to figure out what else we can do, but they can do what they want, but at the end, yes ma'am.
Can I clarify, it's not just teachers, it's a raise for all employees,
It's
just
a,
to clarify.
it's a 4.5 cost of living and then a 0.5 for step. But my point is, we need to be thinking about us as a community, and we shouldn't be looking, how can I get ahead at the expense of further pushing down people who are already suffering. This is much a moral issue as it is a financial issue. I know that's not popular to say, but if you're asking me my opinion, that's my opinion.
Okay, Virginia, and then Maria.
I had a question about this district voting bill and kind of how, if you could talk about how that translates for us here about changing that charter, and if the council can send the request to the General Assembly at that time to change the charter so that we go all at large, like Chesapeake, and lose district voting completely.
Well, there'll be no all at large system. That's not permitted under the legislation that's passing. Our charter will not have to be amended. It's just being superseded. The General Assembly, the City Council is a legislative body created by the General Assembly. We have no sovereignty. We have no legal standing. They could dissolve us tomorrow and never ask our opinion. So what will happen is you'll have a part of the charter that might ultimately be administratively, technically corrected, but whether it's corrected or not, the state law will supplant the charter right up front. Doesn't make any difference what it says.
So does this get rid of that part of our charter that says that we have to have a ballot referendum to change things? Does that mean it's just gone? We don't get to vote on this ever again? We're done?
The city charter provides for advisory referendums on any issue. Advisory is the key word, advisory. So you could have an advisory referendum, but if the question isn't consistent with state law, I suspect the judge isn't going to certify the question that you're posing. The only difference could be the federal lawsuit, because that's the next order of law is the federal law. If the judge issues some kind of ruling, that would supplant even the state statute because he's relying on a federal law and he's making a federal ruling and the state law is subordinate to a federal judge's ruling. I don't know what's gonna happen there. Like I said, I don't know what we're gonna have or how it's gonna look, but I'm certain we're gonna have at least 7 single-member districts. I'm confident that that is going to happen.
Okay, Reed?
So, before I ask my question, I did want to comment that there are binding referendums in Virginia Beach's charter. $10 million or more in general obligation bonds is a binding referendum, and establishing a housing and redevelopment authority in Virginia Beach is a binding referendum by state code.
The state code, correct.
So, my question goes to what's going on at the ocean front, and it kind of addresses what you were saying about being tone deaf. Hurricane Matthew was 2016. We still don't have flooding anywhere near resolved. I read in the paper that we're moving forward with this fantasy wave pool project, and there's all kinds of money. We're doing Rudy Loop. I hear the pier, the 288-foot double-decker concrete pier is no longer dead, but we're talking about bringing. My question to you in the priorities is, at the retreat, your council was clear that flooding was the priority, but the action since then, we've been building a brand new Taj Mahal City Hall. We built a sports shed down at the ocean front. We're talking about all this money. How do we stop that?
Well, last November, people had a chance and the voters voted and put all the incumbents back in. I can't, you ask the voters, you can ask me. I can only hold myself accountable for what I tell you that I'm going to do. I can't judge my fellow peers. I'm an elected official. It's you that have to judge their performance. And collectively, the majority of you put the people in who made all those decisions and they went back. So I don't want to say look in the mirror, but I'm just saying I can't explain it. I can't offer an explanation to any of that.
Oh, okay, it just doesn't seem at odds with what you told them to do, which was stormwater mitigation.
So in the end, the only thing that people understand is when the voters collectively fire you.
Keep electing the same people, you keep getting the same results. Teresa?
My question was with the surfboard, when you're talking about no raises for teachers and all that, money and businesses threatening to go out of business, never mind the ones that already have, that only priority spending, and isn't there like some kind of emergency thing or something where it's like, we're not gonna spend any more money unless we need it? Just like we do in our
Didn't they
schools.
prioritize during this whole pandemic thing on things that are actually necessary?
And
Are they
all,
gonna wear masks at the?
All right, let him answer.
I'm happy to answer it. You might not like the answers, but they're gonna be correct. Is we did do a significant reduction in the general funds on the city side. I mean, no doubt, it wasn't as much as I would have liked to have made, but we did do a reduction. In fact, we gave the school board $7 million over and above what the reduced funding formula was, specifically out of the city side. We gave that to give them money for renovations of schools. And that was something that the majority originally wasn't going to do, but we pushed that through. But we did a hiring freeze for a long time and left it on. All this was to accumulate reduced spending to make sure that we didn't have to lay people off. And we did delay $30 million worth of capital improvements that we delayed, fire stations, number of things, to see how well our economy would do. Fortunately, and largely in part due to our large defense spending in this region, we didn't see the big a hit on a broad scale basis on our economy, and our revenue picture has looked, relative to some of our other cities in the country, very good. Not saying it's not where we'd like it to be, but it was better than we thought. And so we were able to what? Redo those projects. And we just did approve those. We like a fire station over there off Diamond Springs Road. But now to the dome site, which I can't participate in because of conflict of interest, because they're moving substations for Dominion Resources, or Dominion Energy now, and I get more than $5,000 worth of dividends, so I can't participate in any of that kumbaya stuff they do in executive session. So I don't know much about that, but I do know the financing mechanism is from the TIP fund. And that's how they're paying for the debt. So that, you might argue about that whole trust fund architecture, but we don't have the votes to change that. But given that that is the architecture, we're not using funds from the general fund that we share with the schools on a funding formula, are not being diverted to pay for the dome site infrastructure. I just want to be clear about how that's being financed. It's a nuance, but it's important. It's not, obviously, if you go see a movie or play golf, you're paying taxes that go into that fund, but it's like a little trust account. It's not part of the general fund.
Can you speak on the assessments? They are raising the assessments, and that's a backdoor tax right there.
Oh, well, I hope, how many people saw my Facebook on that? I tried to give a very mechanical explanation because it's a mechanical process. What the state law says that any community, it's not just Virginia Beach, when you go out and do your assessment, your taxable property, not counting stuff that was added during that year, you come up with, say, it was $100 last year and now it's $110 this year. You have to, your default rate is going to lower the real estate tax rate so it doesn't generate any more money than the government had in the prior year. So basically it's tax neutral on average. That doesn't mean if your property went up 10%, that you're not going to have your tax bill be the same. It's just going to say in the aggregate, the city won't collect any more money. What's happened in this cycle, as many of you may know, real estate, residential real estate has been like super hot, and the national average, it's up 9.5% on the national average. I don't know what the numbers are for the beach yet, he hasn't released that, but the national average is 9.5%. Clearly, B2 hotels and things in that industry that are based on income, you would be expecting their valuations to what? To go down. And they are going down. So the net increase for the city is 3.7%. That's the net increase. So when you do that calculation, you're going to get the revenue neutral rate, but I'll call it the lowered rate, would be somewhere in the vicinity of 98 cents. And now the question is, is the council going to build a budget based on the lowered rate? Because every penny represents about $6.3 million, a little bit over, but $6.3 million bucks is every penny of real estate tax. So if you lowered the tax rate about 3%, that would be about $18 million, and it would get spread out a lot of places. And what's unfortunate is, you can guess where you think we're going to see the biggest increases among our residential properties. Where do you think that is?
300K and below?
Right.
Yeah,
So because that's where the interest rate, there's more buyers to be there, so now you're going to see, so now the burden of the tax increase is going to fall on the very people who in the economy have been among the most hurt. So now you can see why when people are talking about this tax relief, the council has to be a lot more sophisticated to understand how all that works, and don't get caught up on that macro number, because that just sounds so wonderful. You gotta go back and say, well, how does that work its way out? And how do we go out and make sure that we're not, putting another, lead weight on someone in the pond, And so we're gonna have to look at that hard. The city has real needs, but guess what? So do people.
That's true.
And we're gonna have to find that right balance. I don't know what that right answer is, but I think the balance probably isn't that this is the time for raises,
Right.
unless we can give tax relief to everyone.
Okay, well, thank you so much.
Well, I don't have near a classy a haircut as Bill does.
Did about 20 years ago.
I wonder, Bill, can you hear us? Robert, have you got Bill?
Yeah, talk up, Bill. Ron.
Senator, you're on. We don't hear you. Are you muted?
Ron? Hey, Ron. Just a minute. We'll get it squared away. Go ahead, Bill.
Is that any better?
Yeah, keep going.
Is that any better?
Yeah. Keep going. Wait a second.
All right, you can hear me now, right?
Yep.
Okay, adjust your screen, Bill. All we see is the lower part of your face. Okay.
Yeah, we see you from the nose down.
All
There
right.
you go.
Let me go to the other thing. Is that any better?
Perfect. That should
Good
do it.
enough.
Yeah.
All right, good enough.
It's good.
All right, so I'm going to try to do this from two screens because my computer wouldn't make it work. So the first thing, we'll talk about the things that I did not support. We had a couple of decent bills this year, not a lot of them, but we're doing everything we can to push everything back. With justice reform, what we are doing is we're truly decimating our police departments and their ability to attract, retain, and get good police officers. Not all, but we're not even filling academies. 30 years ago, we had 1,200 people apply and take the test. This last time, we had 59. 30 years ago, we had 30 positions. This last time, we had 82. And we've got a class that's sitting right now with 40% open seats. That's not good. The repeal of the death penalty, that went through both the House and the Senate. The bills have switched, so I'm sure that'll go to the governor and he'll sign it. Elimination of mandatory minimums for jail time. That's blowing through like crazy. Elimination of solitary confinement. That's one of the bills that's going through. Complete parole reform. So there's been bills that say if you, for every day you serve in prison, you get a half a day good credit. Whether you're really good or not, but you get a half a day good credit. So in essence, you don't have to serve your full jail time. You serve a very, very small fraction of it. Here's another good one. On the books today, if you intentionally or maliciously give somebody AIDS or an STD, then you're charged with that as an offense. That's being eliminated. Allowing assault and battery on a police officer. If you say because I was under the influence or there was another issue, that's another one that's being eliminated. So you'll be able to assault a police officer and say, oh, I was under the influence, sorry, couldn't help you there. One of the bills I argued against today, in Northern Virginia, they're raising taxes on utilities, $15 a month to underground utilities. But the first chunk of the money that they're getting from that is going toward bus rapid transit. Yes.
That's right.
The bill is to eliminate the right to work, eliminate qualified immunity, force builders to join labor unions. Teachers have to go through cultural competency training. And when I asked the question in one of the committees of what that was, they just said, well, they have to understand the cultural history of African Americans. I said, well, that should be, they need to understand cultural competency of African Americans, not overall cultural competency. Well, no, they need to understand cultural competency as it applies to social justice, social equity, and judicial equity. I don't quite understand that, but forcing private businesses to disclose how much storage they have for battery packs, how much backup generators they have and capabilities, raising tax on vehicle registrations to pay for state police pay increases because we've been demoralizing them since the Democrats took charge. Well, that's not something we should put on your vehicles. That's something that we should take out of our base budget because that's a need, not a want. Statewide baseline, so they're going to go to all departments, all agencies, and require them to baseline the greenhouse gas initiative emissions across the entire state. And then update that inventory of what's producing greenhouse gas emissions every 4 years. Bills to require employers to give sick leave to all employees, even part-time employees. Bill requiring all employers to report any cases or outbreaks of COVID-19 in their workplace. And keep in mind on our testing is still 50 to 75% accurate. Let's see. And we're doing that instead of trying to track the vaccinations properly, instead of trying to get vaccinations into the arms of citizens, we want to force employers to tell us how many outbreaks and how many cases they have. New terms, marijuana justice. That's one that says if you live in a area or a neighborhood where there is drug enforcement activities, and let's take and digress from that. Basically, if you live in an area with heightened drug enforcement, then you are in an area where there's a lot of drug activity. So if that's the case, though, when you live in one of those areas and you have been arrested for distributing drugs as a drug dealer, then when we're going to let you out of jail, we're going to give you a low interest loan. We're going to set you up with how you can legally distribute marijuana with the hopes that you will pay your taxes on that marijuana. And we'll help you determine how to find a customer base. So first of all, if you are arrested as a drug dealer, you already know how to do it. You already know how to avoid taxes, and you already have a pretty daggone good customer base. So that's part of marijuana justice. We're also going to fund digital equity. And again, I don't quite understand what digital equity is. I understand that we have folks who have varying levels of internet access, but it has something to do with internet access, the cost of internet access, limiting the cost you can charge for internet access, et cetera, et cetera. On the other hand, charging companies more and increasing your taxes to pay for all of these crazy things. Now, we talk about transparency in government. The Secretary of Diversity and Equity and the Secretary of Workforce Development, which is a newly created position, we are going to exempt them from the Freedom of Information Act. So anything they want to do, anything they want to say, anything they want to put in writing or plan, you can FOIA it, but they're exempt, so you'll never get it. So that's about just maybe 15 of the bills, 20 of the bills that we did today. On the other hand, we do have one or two halfway decent bills going through the system, but it's going to take us a long time to recover and see truly the effects of what we've done, not just under COVID, not just under the governor, not just letting the riots go on in Richmond here. It's going to take us literally years to see the true effects of demoralizing our police, allowing riots to happen, and all of this other crazy stuff. So if you think that what's happening now isn't crazy and you're okay with it, I think in 3 years when you see the effects of that, when you see truly 10 years down the road the effects of that, you're going to quickly see a new Virginia, and the only hope we have is taking back the House next year. And I will tell you that the Democrats said the first 60-day session we'll unwind what's been done in the last 10 years. They pretty much did it. And then in the 93-day session, they pushed it even more. And in this session, they're pushing it even more than that. So I'm going to tell you, we've gone from the #1 state to do business and one of the safest states in the country to, as far as number of states, the best states to do business. I think we're now, and this gets updated once a year on the CNBC one, but there's a way to track it where you can see where you are monthly. I think we're in the 20s, if not 30s. And if you saw some of these bills, we would be quickly in line with where we were on getting vaccines into the arms of our citizens, which we were dead last. So with that, I'd like to open it up for questions. And Robert, if you could turn on the video on your thing so I see more than just your picture. That way I can see who's asking questions and what's going on.
Who's got a question?
I have to ask permission from the restaurant owner. We okay on capacity, Mike, to show the audience?
Well, this is educational, right?
Oh, this is, yeah, they can come up, ask them to come up front here.
Yeah, this is an educational, as I understand, this is an educational meeting.
So you can talk to Bill DeSteph.
To what?
So, Vicki, would you want to come up here and ask Bill a question?
Where am I going?
Vicky, right here.
Hey, Bill.
Hey, Vicki.
Hey, I just want to say thank you for everything that you're doing and all the Republicans. I know it's so hard to be a minority and fight, but we appreciate everything you're doing. Keep up the fight, and how can we help? I know that probably most of the people here in the room are really emailing, calling. What else can we do to help you up in Richmond?
Well, I would tell you that with our Democrats on the House side, so Kelly Fowler's, the Nancy guys, Linwood Lewis, any of the Democrats, Lionel Spruill, Louise Lucas, find out where they're going to be on the weekend and spend a little bit of time when they go speak somewhere asking them hard questions.
I like that.
What we're seeing up here is they're not meeting with their constituents. Republicans are. We have the Gottwald Center, and I've met with a bunch of our constituents already. They're not taking testimony from a lot of the constituents. They're shutting down testimony. We have anywhere from a 5 to a 20-minute delay in the video of our meetings. So when they open it up for questions and they say, okay, we're going to go to Victoria Manning. Well, Vicki Manning is going to hear them call her name 5 minutes later or 3 minutes later, and they're going to move on. Well, looks like Vicki Manning's not willing to talk right now. Next we're looking for, and you can't even read our lips because we've got masks on the whole time, and we're required to unless we're eating or drinking. So I'll put on 150 pounds because I'm eating and drinking as much as humanly possible so I can breathe without breathing through a mask.
Very good.
Okay, who else got a question?
Very good.
Robert, you want me to read your question?
No, I've just, it's a, let me go ahead and ask it. Senator DeSteph, I understand.
Yes, sir.
I understand that you all are eliminating the death penalty. Is that a yes or no answer?
Yes, the Democrats are eliminating the death penalty. That's going through on a partisan, so all your Republicans pretty much have said no. All of your Democrats are saying yes. Same with mandatory minimums, solitary confinement, and a massive sweeping parole reform so we can take cold-blooded killers, child sexual predators, rapists, serial killers, and we can put them back out into Kelly Fowler's district, Nancy Guy's district, and the rest of the districts in the state of Virginia back into our neighborhoods.
Thank you very much. That answered my question.
Okay, Reed, you
I'm up here. You're right here, Reed.
Senator DeSteph, as someone who has been involved in the voting process, what reforms, if any, are the General Assembly taking to improve the security and the chain of custody of ballots so that we don't have voter fraud in Virginia, and what discussions have been taking place about improving that process, sir?
Okay, there's been a lot of great discussions. There's been a lot of great Republican bills. Every one of them have been defeated. On the Democratic side, they're still following the national trend, which is to allow everybody to vote multiple times, as many times as you can, with very little or no security. We've eliminated the fact that you have to show an ID. We've eliminated the fact that you have to sign and have your absentee ballot witnessed, so you can get 4,000 or 5,000 absentee ballots per person. It's a complete mess. So it's getting worse, not better. Republicans have put in some great bills to tighten things up, but I'm going to tell you right now, every single one of them has been defeated.
Anybody else want to come up here and read a question? I have one that was submitted here.
You have to come up here.
How long do you think the special session will last, was the question.
Well, the governor called us into a special session starting, I guess, Monday, Tuesday. I think it's going to be at least 16 days, so they get their 46 days. I think that we'll have another special session after that when Biden puts out his next corona relief bill. And I think there'll probably be another one after that on redistricting. So I will tell you right now that last year we had, I guess, in all this 60-day session, 93-day session, went back for another one, veto session. So we had probably, I don't know, 150, 180 days. So about 6 months out of the year we were up here. I think you'll probably see something very similar this year. Because as part-time legislators, we're supposed to be up here 30, 45 days one year, 60 days during a budget year. I'm telling you right now, the Democrats they're not even waiting to see what happens or how much damage they cause. They're trying to jam as much through as possible and change and change and change. And even when we try to fix and point out problems in their silly little bills, it gets worse and worse and worse. And they're not even waiting to see the ramifications of what they just passed. They're passing more horrible bills.
Diana?
All right, Robert, I'll take one more question, then I've got to punch off. I've got another meeting I've got to run to.
Okay, well, all right. I got one more question that somebody submitted here, and they want to know about the Second Amendment. Any bills passing that are going to infringe on Second Amendment?
I'm not sure if I talked about this yet, but yes, there's one that says right now, if you go to a gun range or you go out to the homestead, you can rent a shotgun and shoot skeet. You can rent a shotgun at Oceana and shoot skeet. You can rent a shotgun at some of the places or a gun at some of the places and shoot. They will give you a gun to see if you can shoot. What they're doing now is before you rent a gun to anyone, loan a gun to anyone, do anything with a gun for anyone, you have to run through another background check. I actually said, look, you guys are highlighting suicides and saying this is the reason we've got to add another background check and we can't rent guns. Okay, if somebody's going to commit suicide, it's a mental health issue. We need to solve that on the mental health side, not penalize gun owners or gun folks or the homestead for renting a shotgun to shoot skeet. It's insane what's happening right now. In every turn, if there's a place that they can, in fact, infringe on your constitutional Second Amendment rights, they're trying to do it. They've already laid out a bunch of areas around the Capitol saying gun-free zone, you can't have it, increasing penalties, increasing fines. It's one thing after another, after another, after another. So guys, thank you for having me tonight. Thank you for allowing me to do this. Keep pushing, and we've got to get more people involved. The only way we fix this is turn the House next year. The only way we're going to do that is for you guys to each get in 25, 50, 100 people to get them involved and get out and vote.
Well, what about contacting the legislators? You think if a number of people contacted them, they would change some of their votes? Is there any Democrats siding with Republicans?
One or two every once in a while. That's why I said reach out to Linwood Lewis, reach out to Lionel Spruill, Louise Lucas, reach out to Nancy Guy. If you live in her district, Kelly Fowler, if you live in her district, have people in her district reach out and say, look, I'm not happy with your votes on this. Look, you've gone off the deep end. Hold them accountable. Fire them up.
All right. You heard that, everybody. Get on the phones, get on the emails, contact them. Thank you so much, Senator DeSteph.
No problem. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Yeah.
I called the number in Richmond, and it went to the answering service, who asked me if I wanted them to send an email to my delegate about my question. I said, no, thank you, I can send an email myself. So then I contacted Mara, who is Davis LA, and she helped me contact my delegate in LA.
Well, what I was...
Can't hear.
Yeah. What I was told was if you're going to call the General Assembly I lost it. If you're going to call the General Assembly, don't call that office number up there, call the local office, because they have a switchboard that's answering everybody's. It's not really going to your delegate, and it's just being forwarded, and so you really can't count on it. So call the office.
I did that, so then I called the local office, and it went straight to voicemail, so it's very difficult.
Yeah, probably because they're up in Richmond, but they'll...
Not the delegates. No, not the delegates.
Okay. Yeah, that's right. The delegates are home getting per diem. Ah, okay. So,
She has plenty of volume.
now we need to move on to the business section. Mike, would you like to say anything? I mean, no, Mike. Everybody thank Mike for letting us have this room tonight. Thank you so much. Ready? All right, yes, so you can shut that off. Thank you all for being here. We're going to go to the business meeting right now. Do we have a quorum? Yes. Okay, so we have a quorum. Our first thing
I'm
is
shutting
to
this
do
off
the
now
bylaws.
to
It was
so they
sent
do
out
their
in
business
the
meeting.
newsletter.